You both so much for your patience with us as we're getting started this afternoon. First of all, good afternoon. My name is Alicia Yokoyama. I'm an adult services librarian at Lake Oswego Public Library, and I'd like to welcome you to today's presentation, The Obscure Art of Puzzle Montage with Tim Klein. Before I introduce our speaker, I'd like to thank the Friends of the Library who sponsored this program and so many other cultural and educational events. The Friends of the Lake Oswego Public Library is a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing enhanced support for library projects of community interest. Please visit the Friends website to learn about their work, including the boutique used bookstores, and how you can join in supporting the library. Also, the library has an assistive listening system that you can use to better hear during events taking place on this floor. These devices are available for today's program and are located on the table near the librarian's desk. Now I have the pleasure of introducing today's guest, Tim Klein. Tim Klein is an artist living in Vancouver and has generously donated his time today to share with us the unique art form that he calls puzzle montage. Please give a warm welcome to Tim Klein.
Thank you, Alicia. Can you hear me? How about you folks? Can you hear me? I'm just kidding. You can't answer. So good to see you, though. Those are the folks on YouTube on the live stream. So yeah, that's me, Tim Klein. That's where to find me on the internet. And what I'm talking about is the obscure art of puzzle montage. Why is it obscure? Because I'm one of only 2 people in the world who does it. Well, we'll get to that. I want to start with a question. Actually, I want to start by thanking Alicia Yokoyama and everybody at the Lake Oswego Public Library. Nice place you got here. You Lake Oswegans are lucky folk. So now I'll start with a question. Are jigsaw puzzles made using jigsaws? You would think they were, given the name, or saws of some sort. But the fact is, well, you already know the answer, no. Jigsaw puzzles, at least the mass-produced ones that are made of cardboard, are not made using any kind of saws. They never were. What they're made with is one of these things, which is called a puzzle die. It's like a giant elaborate cookie cutter that cuts all the pieces at once out of a piece of cardboard that has had a picture printed on it, and what emerges from that is a jigsaw puzzle. What we're looking at here is a really tiny one. I think that's maybe, 48 pieces, something like that. In reality, I'm sure some of you at least have done jigsaw puzzles with 500 pieces or 1,000 pieces or even more. In fact, here's a person in a jigsaw puzzle factory working on a gigantic puzzle die. I'm going to guess that's at least 2,000 pieces. And what this person is doing is taking curved metal blades. I don't know whether they're sharp now or they get sharpened later, but eventually they end up sharp because they have to cut through cardboard. It's taking curved metal blades and guiding them into slots that have been carved in a piece of plywood specifically to fit those blades into. It's an incredibly long and difficult and expensive process, as you might guess, and I would guess some people have shed blood in the process on these sharp blades. But that's what it takes. So this is a huge piece of cardboard, or not cardboard, a huge piece of plywood with these metal blades pounded into it in the shape of puzzle pieces. Then this whole thing is turned upside down inside I guess you'd call it a drill press. I've never actually seen it done. But it smashes down onto a piece of cardboard that has had a photograph or an artwork printed on it. And in this case, makes all 2,000 pieces at one time. And then some fancy machine lifts it up and pushes it into a bag. And if we're lucky, gets rid of some of the dust that's left over. And you have a jigsaw puzzle. As I said, it's really expensive to make one of these things. So it would be crazy for a puzzle company to make a new one of these for every puzzle. They don't do that. They make one of these and they use it for as many puzzles as they can until it wears out. So what that means is the same company produces a whole lot of puzzles that have the same cut pattern. And that means the pieces are interchangeable. So if you take 2 puzzles that were cut with the same die, you can mix and match the pieces. And that's what I do. I call that puzzle montage. Here's an example. I don't know how high resolution this screen is for you, but can you see that these 2 small puzzles were cut with the same pattern? Can you see the bottom left piece is the same shape and the one above it is the same shape? So I can tell that these were cut with the same puzzle die. And so what I did was combine them. I took part of the steam engine and part of the horse, and I made an iron horse. Similarly, I could take a puppy and a cupcake and make a pupcake. Those are little ones. I prefer to work with 500-piece puzzles, which are about 18 by 24. In fact, that's one of them there. If you can't see that up close, it's going to come up on the screen soon. But that's about the size I like to work with. That's 500 pieces. Here is one that is that size. It's called Klein, and it's actually pretty abstract and complex compared to the ones that I've shown you. This one was actually made from 3 jigsaw puzzles. One of them was a picture of a cat. One of them was a picture of a statue of a peacock in India. You can barely tell that, but you can see part of its tail up there. And the third one was a tapestry that I just used as the purple background. So that's an example of a more elaborate puzzle montage. Here's another one that was made with 3 jigsaw puzzles. I call it Plunge. One of the puzzles was a picture of wine and grapes. Another one was a picture of this woman who in this montage looks like maybe she's about to leap off a cliff or something, hence the title. In reality, the puzzle was a ballerina and she's leaping. And the third puzzle was a vintage Coca-Cola advertisement, and the only part I took out of that was the eyes of Hilda Clark, I think, was the famous early Coca-Cola model. So that's your introduction to puzzle montage. I'm the one who called it puzzle montage. I get to do that because I'm only the second person ever to do it, and the first person doesn't like that name. So it's actually a specialized form of something that other people do called puzzle collage. And that's a little bit more loosey-goosey. In puzzle collage, you take parts of jigsaw puzzles and glue them on top of each other, rather than take ones that have the same pattern and fit them together as if they were a single jigsaw puzzle. So there's a lot more freedom in puzzle collage, and you're not even restricted to the rectangle of the original puzzle. You could take 6 of these and make a big blob. And in fact, one of my favorite artists who does puzzle collage, his name is Gerhard Meyer. I believe he lives in Germany. And this is one of his puzzle collages. It's 8 feet high and 12 feet long. It's got hundreds and hundreds of portions of jigsaw puzzles in it. I don't know how many different puzzles he stole the sky from and glued them all on top of each other. I don't even know what it's supposed to be, frankly. I guess it's maybe a spaceship hovering over the Earth. Whatever it is, I would love to see it in person because it's just immense. And it must weigh tons. Anyway, this is a puzzle collage, and a very spectacular one, but it's not a puzzle montage, which is what I do. I chose the name puzzle montage because I'm a fan of something called photo montage. Photo montage is something that a lot of people do now in Photoshop, but it's much older than that. Photo montage dates back to the very beginnings of photography itself. And it's an art form where they take photographs of different things and merge them together as if they were one, hence the name montage. This is my favorite photo montage artist. His name is Jerry Uelsmann. And he was doing this in the darkroom long before. These date back to, I don't know, 1950 something maybe, long before Photoshop. So there was a tremendous amount of skill involved in merging a house with the roots of a tree, or the trunk of a tree with a bird's nest and some human hands. I especially love, for whatever reason, the juxtaposition of the man-made and the natural, which is what that is. And so you end up seeing a lot of that in my own work as well. Sad to say, Jerry Uelsmann died recently. He's one of my heroes. Here's the very first puzzle montage I ever did. It's called Home in the Mountains. I did it after I had read a magazine article about the one other guy who does this art form, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But I was walking through a thrift store in 1993, 30-some years ago, saw 2 puzzles next to each other that were made by the same manufacturer. They were cheap, and I decided to take a chance. I wonder if I could fit those 2 together and make something cool. And this is what I made. And you know what? If it hadn't worked out, I probably never would have done another one. So I got pretty lucky here. But it's a picture of a plantation house from somewhere in the South and a mountain from somewhere in the world. Only much later did I find out, because these puzzles weren't labeled, that the mansion is actually from my hometown of Wilmington, North Carolina. It's outside of town. It's Orton Plantation is the name of it. It's a museum now. And the mountain is Mount Jefferson in my new home in the Pacific Northwest. I did this when I wasn't in either of those places. So somehow I knitted my past and my future together in my first puzzle montage. So I told you that I got my start when I read a magazine article about the other guy. His name is Mel Andringa. He's a professor of art in Iowa. I think he's retired now, though. And he's been doing this sort of thing since the 1960s. This is one of my favorite ones of his. He took a tree by Van Gogh, or Van Gogh if you fancy, and combined it with a puzzle showing clockworks. And he calls it the tree of punctuality. But there again, it's the juxtaposition of the natural and the man-made that appeals so much to me. So that's one of my favorites of his. Here's my other favorite one of his. This is everybody else's favorite. He took a picture of a hamburger and a picture of some raccoons in a tree and combined them. Anybody care to guess what that's called, what the title of that is? It's very clever. I'll give you a minute. What would you title this? How about you folks on YouTube? What would you title this? Big Rack. I love that. That could have no other title but Big Rack. So Mel Andringa, in his younger days, actually toured around the country as Professor Puzzle, giving lectures and talks on some puzzle-oriented topic that involved his puzzle artworks. I wish I could step in a time machine and go back and see them. He's a little bit older these days. But I love the fact that he wears glasses that have one square lens and one round lens, and he has trained his bird to sit on them. I think that's a lovable man. I did finally meet him, by the way. I didn't know if I ever would, but I made it out to Iowa and actually shook his hand, and we're Facebook friends now. So having read that magazine article and had that first initial success, I embarked on my career as a software engineer, not as an artist. I never thought of myself as an artist, and just made these puzzle montages, onesie-twosie, every once in a while, and showed them to my friends. Somebody finally told me, Tim, you got enough of these things, you really ought to at least make a website. So I made a website, and it sat there for a long time, and the only people who ever visited it were my friends, until a friend of a friend came along who happened to be a blog writer. She has a wonderful name, Rusty Blazenhoff. How's that for a name? She was one of the longtime blog writers for one of the internet's oldest blogs called Boing Boing. That's its logo in red up there at the top. And she just fell in love with my work. A friend of a friend directed her to my website, and she just couldn't get enough of it. So of course she wrote about it in her blog entry in November 2018, which I guess was 7 years ago now. And it just took off. I totally won the internet that day. For whatever reason, my little Iron Horse montage and some other ones that she put in her article just totally struck a chord, and the world thought it was the greatest thing ever. And I learned something about what's called the blogosphere. It's the environment in which blogs are published. It moves so fast that when one blog publishes something that is very popular, the other ones pick it up instantly. They don't stop and ask. They just do it. And if they're nice folks, they at least point back to the original article, but it happens super quick. So what happened was somebody saw this. In fact, I know who saw this Boing Boing article. It was a guy named John Overholt, who is a curator at the Harvard University Library. And he liked it so much, he actually made this meme out of it and gave it a caption that said, "Turns out jigsaw puzzle makers just use the same die to cut apart different puzzles so you can mix and match." And sure enough, he included the Iron Horse. And he later wrote to me and apologized to me for not crediting me in this meme. If he had known how popular this was going to be, he said he would definitely have taken more trouble to link to the original. But he within a very short amount of time, got 45,000 likes and 14,000 retweets. This was back in the days of tweets. Each one of those of which got thousands of likes. One of the people who saw that and retweeted it was none other than the author Stephen King, and a whole lot of people pay attention to Stephen King. So that was kind of cool, and then I ended up on various other places that I didn't know existed, like Pee Wee Herman's blog. I'm actually a big fan of Pee Wee Herman, and I didn't know he had a blog. Apparently it was very popular while he was still alive. It was children-oriented, but that was a big boost, and yeah, sure enough, there's the Iron Horse yet again. I also made it into some things I never dreamed I'd make it into. Some very, very popular art blogs, not just culture blogs, but actual blogs that talk about new art that has come out. And one of them is called This Is Colossal, and I was super proud to be there. Another one in the same niche is called My Modern Met, and I ended up there. This is all within the space of a few days. That's how fast these things move. And I made it across the pond, and now I'm somebody in some French blog is talking about me, and then Spanish. I don't read these languages, and then Italian. Now we're starting to get into languages I not only don't read, I can't even identify them. I guess that's Czech, maybe? And Russian? Is that, I don't know is it Croatian? I don't know what any of these are. But it all happens super quick, and my email box is overflowing with people saying, oh, I love your work, plus some really weird requests. I got a request from somebody at the National Football League wanting me to make puzzle montages for their football game advertisements. And I didn't know how that would work, but I guess I was flattered to be asked. I got various famous people asking to buy my works. Some of them actually did. That was pretty amazing. And eventually I made it into the print magazines too. So this is a Dutch magazine called D&D, or Dietjes and Datjes, I guess, which means this and that. It's sort of the People magazine equivalent in the Netherlands, I'm told. Finally, they printed something other than Iron Horse. This is one of my other small puzzle montages called Daisy Bindi. It's made from a cat face and a bouquet of flowers. And then from there, I made it into other print magazines. That one's in German. This was a magazine called Society in France. This was a South Korean children's science magazine. This was Die Spiegel, which is the young adult version of Die Spiegel, the famous German newspaper / magazine. I was very flattered to be there. And even in old England, I found myself under a article about how to put milk in your tea to prevent cancer. I found that very quaint. Oprah put me in her magazine. I had never seen an episode of Oprah magazine open in my life, but it turns out they have something every month called the Gratitude Meter, where they rate 5 things from awe to awesome. And here's me. So apparently I rate somewhat above a pizza slicer made from a bicycle, but somewhat below Valentine's Day cards for LGBTQ couples. So that's where I stand on the gratitude meter. Everybody loves the Iron Horse. In fact, I have it right here. It's really little. And it just always it always makes me wonder why that one in particular took off. It's not bad. I don't dislike it. I don't know that I would consider it my greatest one. I think the answer is that it is a number of things. It's surreal, but it's accessibly surreal. It's surreality that is not just weird for the sake of being weird. It's a bit amusing, and in any case, it's understandable. It's a train merged with a horse, right? And it's also pretty easy to see that it's a jigsaw puzzle and what has been done here. There's a pretty sharp seam between one half and the other. It's not intermingled like some of the other ones. So I guess I can see why this is the representative sample of my puzzle montage artwork that will probably be that way for the rest of my life. I don't know. One of the really neat places I ended up in was a academic textbook. I'm actually in two of them now since I made this slideshow. The Rutledge Handbook of Remix Studies and Digital Humanities. You don't get much more academic than that, right? I was in a chapter by Professor Christine Boone of the University of North Carolina at Asheville. She normally talks about something called music mashups, where people take popular songs and find ways to mix them in such a way that it actually works. And if you want to go home and look that up, there are some amazing music mashups in the world. And part of the problem is that they violate copyright. So you're not going to see them or hear them on TV or hear them on the radio. You kind of got to seek them out, music mashups. So that's what she writes about as an academic study. But she took a detour and wrote about, well, sure enough, the Iron Horse. I'm not going to read all of this, but indulge me a minute. I'm going to read you some of it. Visual artist Tim Klein produces mashups that comment in a powerful way. After noticing that jigsaw puzzle manufacturers use the same pattern to cut pieces for many different puzzles, he started to combine pieces from multiple puzzles without doing any additional cutting. Klein's pieces often feature a juxtaposition of something man-made with something from the natural world. These mashups are effective because they, like musical mashups, they exploit the modular nature of die-cut puzzles, but they're obviously not random. Figure 28.3, which Klein has appropriately titled Iron Horse, exemplifies the process and possibilities for new meanings. To me, this piece tells the story of the Industrial Revolution, of the rise of railway transport, of the objectification of animals, and even of disappearing wildlife in the United States. I wasn't thinking of all of that when I did it. But I'll own it. And I'm not going to claim that after the fact that I was thinking of that, but the reason I will own it is that I'm well aware as an artist that art is not a one-way communication. It is a dialogue between artist and viewer. It's been said that no two viewers see the same artwork. And the reason for that is that each viewer, two people standing side by side, each of them is going to have brought a different set of experiences and thoughts and just a different life to the whole experience. And of course, everything you see is interpreted in the context of everything you've ever seen before and everything you've done before. So this person who was predisposed to see the Industrial Revolution and the exploitation of animals saw that, and I think that's awful cool. Even though I didn't think of it, that emerged from the dialogue, and that is one of the things I really love about being an artist, is sometimes having the opportunity to hear the other side of that dialogue. We don't always get to. People stand in front of an artwork and don't say anything, but when it gets posted online or in a book or something, sometimes you hear the other side of that dialogue, and I love that. This is a employee lounge at the headquarters of the Target Corporation, like the Target stores in Minneapolis. And those little blobs in the background are 4 of my artworks. They actually bought 4 of them at once. They have a culture of fostering creativity in their employees. And so they found my artwork to be useful for that sort of thing to put on their employee lounge. Unfortunately, I can't go there. It's not open to the public, so I have to settle for this fuzzy photo they sent me. But that's my one corporate collection that I'm in so far. If you know any corporations, send them my way. But what's the one thing that makes you an artist? It's not being in a textbook. It's not being in a blog. It's not being in a corporate art collection. What is it? It's when a rock band uses you for their album cover art. That's when you're a real artist. User is a band in Australia, and they found my reuse of jigsaw puzzles to make art to be in keeping with the theme of their recycling-themed album called Rehash, Remake, Remodel. So they wrote to me all excited and said, can we use your artwork? And I said, you darn straight you can. So now I own a copy of this record that I can't play. I called them a rock band, but I actually don't know what they are. You can hear them on Spotify. Maybe it's rock. I don't know what to call. I like it. I just don't know what it is. Also ended up in a book called The Puzzler. Any of you literary types heard of this author, A.J. Jacobs? Quite the bestseller. My understanding, I've never read any of his books, including this one, although I intend to. My understanding is that he calls himself a lifestyle extremist. So he adopts something that he's going to do for a year and tries to do it and then writes a book about it. So I think one of his most famous ones was The Year of Living Biblically, where he tried very hard to live literally according to all the instructions of the Bible. That's probably an interesting book. This one is a little tamer. He tried to do all of the hardest puzzles in the world. Of course, my works aren't actually puzzles, but along the way he encountered them and included them in his book. And so now I have an autographed copy of A.J. Jacobs' book, The Puzzler. How are we doing for time? I don't have a watch. Now I have a watch. Never mind. Oh, it's 2 o'clock. How long do I have? Till 2:30? Is that right? Okay. All right. We're doing great. I won't take that long. I will stop for questions. I just want to show you some of my favorite artworks, a few of which are actually here, by the way. There's a few back there. There's one up here. And they're all on my website, which I'll flash up on the screen at the end. This one is called Who Holds the Cage Holds the Bird. And I made it by combining a modern-day puzzle made from a painting by William Vanderdassen of a snowy owl, and a puzzle from 1910 by Friedrich Karl Friesecke called The Open Window. And I put them together to make, instead of a woman holding a bird cage, an owl holding a bird cage. What I love about this is that I united two artists who never could possibly have met. They were working 100 years apart, and one of them died long before the other one was an artist. So these two artists have met in a sort of involuntary jam session, thanks to me. Sorry, guys. This one's called the Mercy-Go-Round. I made it by combining a picture of a church with a picture of a carnival ride, putting it over the steeple of the church as if it were the spindle of the carousel. So these are people spinning around. When this one gets posted online by someone, it gets a lot of comments, and there's a lot of variation. Some people are actually offended that it's blasphemous, but I think a greater number of people actually find it hopeful. And in eavesdropping on these conversations, which I'm very careful not to intrude on, I hear comments like, this speaks to me of the cycle of sin and forgiveness. So to that person, this cycling around the church, these people cycling around the church, well, they're coming into the sunlight, having gone around the church once, and eventually they end up in the shadow again, but they emerge into the sunlight again, having gone around the church. So at some point I actually added a subtitle and called it Sunshine and Shadow, because I like the clever mercy-go-round title, but I also want to cue people to maybe think a little further about it than just the whimsical. Here's another one that's kind of like that. This one is back there, by the way. It's called White Elephant. For those who don't know, a white elephant is a gift that is actually a burden. It seems like a gift, but you don't really want it. It's a burden. So this I made from a puzzle of a Christmas present with a white kitten emerging from it, but I added another puzzle of a big white adult cat. And the subtitle is Present and Future. Present, haha, it's a pun. But it also refers to the fact that the kitten is the present, and the bigger white cat that it's going to become represents the future. Anyone want to guess the title of this dinosaur plus train? By the way, from Iron Horse, the leftover train parts, this is where they went. It's called Tyrannosaurus Rex. How could it be called anything but Tyrannosaurus Rex? This one has some special meaning to me. It's a combination of a teddy bear that had the caption, "Consider yourself hugged," and a Budweiser light can that had the caption, "You light up my life." These were greeting card puzzles made by the Hallmark Company in 1980 something or other. And so I started out just combining the teddy bear and the beer can without the caption. And I was going to call it Teddy Beer, of course. Haha. But then I started looking at the caption. Consider yourself hugged. And I realized there's some pathos there. There's some sadness there about a beer can wanting to hug you or wanting to have you consider yourself hugged as a result of this beer can. So I put the caption in it, consider yourself hugged, and I gave it a more provocative title called Surrogate. And the reason I say it has potential or it has personal meaning for me is that it does actually kind of remind me of a time in my life when I had more beers than hugs. This is called Schools, or Fishing for Answers. It's made from a comical image of a fisherman who is fishing in exactly the wrong place. In the original puzzle, the entire rest of the puzzle is made up of fish except where his hook is. But I found that it was made with the same cut pattern as a puzzle that was a blank crossword puzzle on the box, and you were supposed to fill out the crossword puzzle by putting the jigsaw puzzle together to check your answers. So the jigsaw puzzle had the answers in it. So I called it Fishing for Answers. I had a girlfriend who was an professor of English literature at the University of Oregon, and she had recently left that profession somewhat in disgust with academia in general. And so she just loved this puzzle called Schools, Fishing for Answers, because to her this was a representation of academia. All of these isolated schools and all of these answers that don't mean anything, and people looking for answers and not finding them. She found it especially delightful that this particular school down here had the word arcana at the core of it, and no less Aristotelian arcana. So I smile to think of my ex-girlfriend every time I look at that one. Here's this one I promised you. It's called, wait for it, King of the Road. It's a combination of King Tut and an 18-wheel truck. All right, how are we doing for time? Oh, we're doing great. I must be talking fast. Yeah, a lot of people tell me this one is their favorite, and I like it for a different reason, and I'll show you. There's this other montage that I made, and it's not quite so immediately appealing. It's sort of a mask. It's sort of a face. It's sort of, I called it portrait. The reason I like it is it's the same two puzzles. It's the same King Tut puzzle and the same 18-wheeler puzzle, turned upside down and with different pieces used. But I love the fact that I was able to not only pull one bizarre image out of this pair of puzzles, but a second one. And of course, that makes me wonder how many other images are lurking in these two puzzles. I don't know. These are the only two I've ever found. It's an interesting question that two different... here's the original. Here's the original too. It's just an interesting question to take two unrelated images that most people would never even think of finding a single collage or montage or mashup in the middle of, and there's at least two. Here's another one that is sort of the same way. I had these two puzzles. There was this puzzle of a puppy and a puzzle of a waterfall, and I had an idea, which turned out to be a terrible idea, to move the puzzle or the puppy's face into the waterfall to make a waterfall with a face. And a waterfall is a cataract, so I was going to call it Doggeract. Heaven help me. I'm glad that didn't work out. And it really didn't work out. If I'd known I was going to tell you about it, I'd have taken a picture of how bad it was, how badly it worked to have that dog's picture in the waterfall. So I gave up in disgust and walked away, left it on the table where I had been working on it, did something else. And came back into the room later for a totally different reason. Didn't even look at this Doggeract sitting over there. And I stopped short because I found myself thinking about George Washington. And I said, why in the world am I thinking about George Washington right now? Did I see a picture of George Washington? So I looked around, and what I discovered was that, in addition to the puzzle waterfall combination that I'd been working on, the easiest way to keep track of the pieces that I don't use is to make the inverse montage next to it, just to keep track of them all. And that's what I had seen. I had seen all the pieces that I hadn't used in the Doggeract, and they just sort of kind of happened to look like George Washington, like this guy. Just enough for my... Oh, sorry. Yeah, that guy. Just enough for my... why can't I go back? How very strange. Ah, all right. So it reminded me of George Washington just enough to make me think of George Washington. And it's not my greatest artwork, but it was such a roundabout way to create an artwork. It makes me wonder how many other ones are in there lurking, waiting for me to look at it out of the corner of my eye, or see it upside down, or have the flu and be woozy that day and see something I wouldn't otherwise see. Or, I have glasses now. If I look at something without my glasses, am I going to see something that I wouldn't see with my glasses? It's almost disturbing to think that there's a gazillion artworks waiting to be seen that maybe I'll never see. But it leads me, we're finishing up here. It leads me, the mathematician in me, to ask the question, though. For any two 500-piece puzzles, which is what these are, how many ways are there to swap the pieces? Well, you could just swap one. That wouldn't be very interesting. Or you could swap the top corner and the bottom corner. Also not interesting. Or you could swap the entire puzzle or the entire puppy's face into the waterfall. That might be interesting. It turned out not to be. Or you could swap some strange, unpredictable combination of pieces to make George Washington. That's kind of interesting. But mathematically, how many different ways are there to combine these two 500-piece jigsaw puzzles? Well, the answer is, as any mathematician could tell you, is 2 to the 500th power, because there are 500 puzzle pieces. Anybody know how big of a number that is? It's massive. It is unimaginably big. Humans cannot imagine how big of a number that is. That is more grains of sand than on all the beaches of Earth. That is more stars than all of the stars in the Milky Way galaxy. That is how many different possible puzzle montages exist just between these two puzzles. And if you add a third puzzle, well, now it's 3 to the power of 500, which is even more unimaginable. And, of course, there's gazillions and gazillions of puzzles in the world, which means there are gazillions of possible pairings of puzzles in the world. So it's essentially infinite. You think of a blank canvas that a painter comes at as having infinite possibilities, which it does. It's not quite the same infinity if you take two jigsaw puzzles, because you're restricted, first of all, to the images that are on them in the first place, and second of all, to the fact that there's only so many pieces. But the numbers are so huge that it might as well be infinity. So I'm not an art academician, but I submit that the art of puzzle montage is just as infinite as the art of painting or any other art form. I submit to you, the academic world, that puzzle montage is a legitimate art form. So I'm going to stop for questions now, but I will start with a question that everybody asks me, and if they're not too shy, and that is, hey, Tim, is it okay to try this myself? Boy, tell you what, not only is it okay, I welcome it. I'll help you. I would love to see more people doing this art form. I don't want to be the only one. The other guy, Mel Andringa, he's getting up there. I'm at some point going to be the only person doing this art form, and I'm getting up there too. So I would love to see this not die out with me. I would love to see somebody somewhere get the spark and start doing it just like I did reading that magazine 30 years ago. Okay, that's it for me yakking. What kind of questions anybody got? Oh, and by the way, here's once again, here's how to find me on the internet. And I'll stick around after this for questions too, if you don't want to ask, but I would welcome any questions. Yes. Yeah, good question. It's a question about my process. I'll try to repeat it. The question is, do you assemble two puzzles side by side, or do you start with one puzzle and I'm putting words in your mouth now, but start with one puzzle and then try to find another puzzle to find it? Or do you start with an idea and try to find two puzzles to find it? Yeah, if you're a painter, you can start with an idea out of the blue and just start painting it, but I don't have that option. That is one of the ways I am limited. I have to work with what I'm given, what I can find. And it's even more restrictive than you might think, because the puzzles that work best for this art form are puzzles that are of one thing, a clown or a dog, for example. And that's mostly old puzzles these days, because since the dawn of Photoshop, puzzles have become very busy. They're more fun to put together when they're busy, like Where's Waldo, or every breed of dog instead of one dog, or every tourist attraction in North America instead of just the Grand Canyon or whatever. So I mostly have to search for vintage jigsaw puzzles, which means I haunt the thrift stores and the estate sales and eBay if I'm wanting to splurge. But to answer your question, yeah, my life is not long enough to do it any other way. I have to find two puzzles that have the same cut pattern already and assemble one of them. But I don't assemble them side by side. I learned this from my mentor, Mel Andringa. He assembles one puzzle, and then he assembles the second puzzle on top of the first one, because they have the same cut pattern. So the first one can give you a guide as to where this odd-looking piece is supposed to go in the second puzzle on top of it. But more to the point, he and I see juxtapositions that I never would have thought of otherwise as the puzzle develops at random, and I'm seeing part of the bottom puzzle and part of the top puzzle. And sometimes ideas come out that are better than the ones I thought I was starting with. So it's as much a voyage of discovery as of deliberate creation of a specific thing. The question is, am I layering them on glass or acrylic so I can see the one below? That isn't really necessary. In fact, it helps not to, because when I was saying how puzzles get smashed down by a giant die cutter, right? And it smashes into the cardboard. Well, that cardboard doesn't evaporate. It has to go somewhere, and where it goes is down. So if you turn a jigsaw puzzle over, especially a thick, high-quality one, it's bumpy. It's got little ridges where all the cardboard went when the blades went through the thing. So if you're assembling a jigsaw puzzle on top of another jigsaw puzzle with the same cut pattern, you can actually tell it actually clicks into place on top of it because of those indentations that were made by the die. So it actually helps not to have any clear material in between, usually. Great questions. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, go ahead. Do I ever paint on the puzzle, i.e. cheat? Excellent question. I'd be tempted to if I were a painter, but I'm not. I'm a computer programmer, so I have to work with, as I said, I kind of have to work with what I'm given. Mel Andringa, who is an art professor, the other guy who does this, said he did actually do that once or twice and found it very unsatisfying. And to me, I think it would too. Not that, and I mean, if one of you wants to do that, by all means, please do. To me, part of the charm of it for me is in the treasure hunt of finding two things that go together, rather just by themselves, as if they were two images that have been lying latent for decades on somebody's game room puzzle shelf, gathering dust until I came along like an archaeologist and reassembled them like some fragmented artifact. I love that. I don't think I have it in me to be a painter. But to answer your question, I do cheat a little sometimes, and what I do is sometimes a montage will work perfectly, except there's one or two parts of a puzzle piece that are sticking out, like covering the eye of a person that needs to not have their eye covered. I have been known to slice the piece. So I will cut off a little tab now and then if it's worth the trouble to make the artwork work that way. Any other questions? What do you got, Alicia? Yes. Yeah, if you'll let me paraphrase your question, I'll be really glad you asked it. My paraphrasing of the question is, how do you find two puzzles that have the same cut pattern? Is it marked on the box or something? The reason I'm really glad you asked me that is because I have a slide for that. So two puzzles may have the same cut pattern if they're made by the same manufacturer, because of course they have to be made by the same die, and every manufacturer makes their own dies, and they don't typically share them. So they have to be the same brand, and of course they have to have the same number of pieces, and of course they have to have the same dimensions, 18 by 24 inches or 20 by 20 inches or whatever. And unfortunately, they pretty much have to have close copyright dates. And the reason for that is that those puzzle dies that I said were so incredibly expensive and complicated to make, they don't last forever. They are under an unbelievable amount of pressure, like tons of pressure with every puzzle that they make. So eventually the blades wear out, or they break, or the plywood breaks, or whatever. So it's been I'm not in the puzzle industry, but it's been my experience that those dies seem to last about a year, maybe 2 years. So if you can find these puzzles with these 4 criteria, same brand, same number of pieces, same dimensions, about the same copyright date, then you have a chance that they have the same cut pattern. It's not guaranteed, though, because the big manufacturers have multiple dies in production at the same time, and they're not the same. So 2 copies of the same puzzle may have been made on the same day, but on 2 different dies, so they may have 2 completely different cut patterns. And conversely, any 2 puzzles that were made on that day may have the same cut pattern, but they may have been run through the machine upside down with respect to each other. So now one of them is upside, so the puppy is upside down with respect to the clown. And sometimes that's a good thing, but mostly it isn't. So there's really no way to know for sure except to buy the darn puzzle and open it up. The shortcut that saves my life is the fact that if you can find the 4 corners, assuming it's a square or a rectangular puzzle, and you match them up exactly, then the rest of the pattern will match. And if they don't match, then you don't have a match. So you don't actually have to put them all the way together to find out if they're the same, but you do have to open the box. Other questions? We have just about a minute, or more than a minute, but just about time for one question, if anyone has one. The question is it traumatic when there are missing pieces? And you bet it is, because I can't just go to the store and buy another one of these, right? And even if I go to the thrift store and find another copy of it, there's a good chance it's not the same cut pattern, or it's upside down, or so yeah, it can be pretty darn heartbreaking to discover that the piece you really need is not there. It can also be a spur to creativity. Okay, how can I make it work without that piece? And if there's 20 pieces missing, I'm probably in trouble. But I've been known to actually come up with something better than I would have had if that piece hadn't been missing. So it's a case-by-case basis. Good question. Good questions, everybody. Thank you, and thank you for your thank you for coming to my little TED talk here. I really enjoyed being here.
So much, Tim, for doing this for us. This is so fascinating. And for those of you who are playing along with the Adult Summer Library Challenge, the word to claim your prize points for today is obscure. And please also stay around and join us for our puzzle swap, as well as snacks in the back. Thank you so much for being here. Have a good afternoon.